Hi, welcome to La Sierra. We're excited to worship with you. My name is Chris. I'm the lead pastor here in this church where we're convinced church is simply community. Our mission is relationships, our method is love, our vision is peace among all creation, and we're learning this from Jesus. You can learn more about us at lasierra.church. You could be in touch with a pastor or one of our elders. That's how you also could become a financial partner for this ministry. You've joined us during Holy Week. These are the days we slow down and walk with Jesus, his last days on earth, and into his mysterious resurrection. Each gathering will be in the Gospel of Matthew. If you have a Bible where you are, we invite you to join us. We'll begin in Matthew chapter 26. Yes, through silence and song, through poetry and painting, through words and weeping, and even joy, we'll be waiting on God. We're waiting as we could have never conceived before 2020, aren't we? We're waiting for plague to pass over. And we're waiting with God. God has experience in trying and troubling times. So when you hear us say, practice resurrection over these next 4 days, you'll know that that's our simple confession and prayer to the Spirit to take our occupied souls and draw us closer to hope and home. Welcome to La Sierra.
Good morning. I'm Dave. I'm one of the pastors here at La Sierra University Church. Our worship today is going to feel a little different to the other days of the Easter story. On the other days, we experience the action and the drama, the sacrifice and the glory, but today we pause to take seriously the death of God. Last night, we journeyed with Jesus through the violent crowds and up to a hill where power-hungry leaders nailed him to a cross. He took his final breath and everyone walked away. For some, the spectacle they came to see was over and they returned to normal life. For others, it feels as though all is lost. Jesus, their friend, their Messiah, their God, has been ripped away and his absence leaves them empty. And now today is Saturday. We call it Sabbath around here, but on this Sabbath we sit in between the sacrifice of yesterday and the glory of tomorrow. On this Sabbath, we acknowledge the feeling of the absence of God, the times in our lives that we have cried out and he felt silent. This feeling of absence is not the end of the story, and yet it is a part of all our stories. So even when it feels like God is silent, we invite you to join us today, to join us as we choose vulnerability and choose to open ourselves and listen for the heart of God when life is darkest. So with all of that in mind, we invite you to pray with us today, to pray over the pandemic that is before us, to pray also for any area of your own lives or the lives of people you know where you're searching for God at this moment. We ask if there is something that you would like us to specifically pray for, that you actually drop that into the comments on our live stream feeds now, and be assured that we will be praying for that as a pastoral team this week and as a church community. Right now, we are going to pray together through the form of worship and video.
Praise be the nurses and doctors, every medical staff bent over flesh to offer care, for lives saved and lives lost, for showing up either way. Praise for the farmers tilling soil, planting seeds so food can grow, an act of hope if ever there was. Praise be the janitors and garbage collectors, the grocery store clerks and the truck drivers barreling through long, quiet nights. Give thanks for bus drivers, delivery persons, postal workers, and all those keeping an eye on water, gas, and electricity. Blessings on our leaders making hard choices for the common good, offering words of assurance. Celebrate the scientists working away to understand the thing that plagues us, to find an antidote, and all the medicine makers. Praise be the journalists keeping us informed. Praise be the teachers finding new ways to educate children from afar, and blessings on parents holding it together for them. Blessed are the elderly and those with weakened immune systems, all those who worry for their health. Praise for those who stay at home to protect them. Blessed are the domestic violence victims on lockdown with abusers, the homeless and refugees. Praise for the artists and poets, the singers and storytellers, all those who nourish with words and sound and color. Blessed are the ministers and therapists of every kind, bringing words of comfort. Blessed are the ones whose jobs are lost, who have no savings, who feel fear of the unknown gnawing. Blessed are those in grief, especially who mourn alone. Blessed are those who have passed into the great night. Praise for police and firefighters, paramedics, and all who work to keep us safe. Praise for all the workers and caregivers of every kind. Praise for the sound of notifications, messages from friends reaching across the distance. Give thanks for laughter and kindness. Praise be our four-footed companions with no forethought or anxiety, responding only in love. Praise for the seas and rivers, forests and stones who teach us to endure. Give thanks for your ancestors, for the wars and plagues they endured and survived. Their resilience is in your bones, your blood. Blessed is the water that flows over our hands and the soap that helps keep them clean each time a baptism. Praise every moment of stillness and silence so new voices can be heard. Praise the chants and slowness. Praise be the birds who continue to sing the sky awake each day. Praise for the primrose poking yellow petals from dark earth. Blessed is the air clearing overhead so one day we can breathe deeply again. And when this has passed, may we say that love spread more quickly than any virus ever could. May we say this was not just an ending, but also a place to begin.
You sent the darkness running out of an empty grave. Now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest praise. You sent the darkness running out of an empty grave. Now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest praise. You sent the darkness running out of an empty grave. Now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest place. You sent the darkness running out of an empty grave. Now seated alone in glory, enthroned on the highest place. You reign above it all. You reign above it all. Over the universe and over every heart, there is no higher name. Jesus, you reign above it all. Let all of heaven and the earth erupt in song. Sing hallelujah to the everlasting one. There is no higher name. Jesus, you reign above it all. There is no higher name. Jesus, you reign above it all. You are the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. Your sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. Death could not hold you. The veil torn before you. You silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring the praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. You have no right
after you have deep cleaned your home, rearranged the furniture for the third time this week, after you have ordered more yoga pants, eaten the last of your quarantine snacks, you may start to feel the gnaw of productivity spurring you to keep busy. Before you decide to wash the carpet of your living room or power wash the front porch, may I suggest that you sit still with yourself for just a moment, because there's no amount of cleaning that will make you feel normal again, no amount of chores or bread baking that will rid you of the feeling that life just isn't what it was. This new normal has consumed our lives with updates, with paranoia, with anxiousness. We are constantly peppered with a barrage of news updates. Please to stay home. The number of cases keeps growing and we're scared. I'm scared. And when we sit with ourselves long enough, the anxiety slips in under our doors through the cracks of our windows until it takes up all the space in our minds. We are caught in the waiting, forced to sit in the uncomfortable space of, I don't know. So we do what we can and what we know and what is familiar. We repeat the stories we are most familiar with, the stories of our childhood, the stories that have given us hope, the stories that remind us of a creator who loves us, who hurts with us, who knows how to sit in the uncomfortable and wait. We take a deep breath, practice how to be fluid, to flow and bend and reshape, to adapt and accommodate. We are all trying to stay afloat on a raft we are still building, so we hope. We hope big and loud and audaciously. We look for a hope that tomorrow can be kinder, that we can be kinder. And I want to believe on the other side of all of this, we might find a gentler way to live in the world. We practice that hope and the waiting. And when everything around us feels like dry bones and death, when everything is death and uncertainty, we practice hope, practice art, practice patience, we practice creation, practice love, practice resurrection. Amen.
The whole earth is dark. The whole earth. Not just the lights in Jerusalem, not just the lights or shadows around Golgotha. The whole earth is dark. Darkness is universal, but the pain and the experience is personal. Peter, James, and John, from the night before, from the Last Supper, where are they now? Where have they all gone now? The high priests, the religious leaders, those who scoffed Jesus, the chanting crowds, where have they gone now? And what about all the pilgrims who were in town for Passover? No one's around? The whole place is dark? Can you hear them arguing from behind closed doors, or they're working on the details of the disastrous day they've witnessed? Everyone's gone? This is when Matthew, the storyteller, says the one thing he can say. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary stayed sitting in plain view of the tomb. I'm attracted to this kind of storytelling, this kind of less is more storytelling in the Bible when the details go missing, and that allows us space to move around in the story. Mary and Mary sit in plain view of the tomb. We presume they stayed there all night. Matthew wants us to think that. This is like, parents waiting up for teenagers who've missed curfew, or this is like teenagers waiting for parents to fall asleep, staying up all night. Mary and Mary sit opposite the tomb. They actually do what Jesus asked of the disciples from the night before at the Last Supper. Stay awake with me. Be my companion. Here are 2 disciples willing to do so. Did they replay scenes from that day? I wonder, I imagine. They witnessed torture too difficult to forget. Did they really sit still all night? Do you think that they curled up in exhaustion at some point and fell asleep? Richard Rohr is helpful to me. Richard Rohr might say of these 2 disciples that sitting opposite the tomb, Mary and Mary, that they've now entered into a kind of crisis contemplation, that they've begun to navigate their pain. Crisis contemplation. Rohr would say to us that Christians, especially in the Western world, we're not good at this. We're not good at contemplating our pain, mostly because we're in a hurry, mostly because we're addicted to shortcuts, the shortcut to anything. In the process, Rohr says, we've become naive about pain and suffering. When suffering comes, we try to handle it efficiently. We deny it, we medicate, we use our willpower, we go to counseling, therapy, although therapy is a good thing. That's not his point. His point is actually we try to handle suffering, and we forget the most obvious of truths. We can't handle suffering. Suffering handles us. Mary and Mary have entered this kind of crisis contemplation now. It's a deep and mysterious place. All good and useful spirituality will address pain and suffering. What do I mean by that? Hey, friends, we can obey the commandments. We can have religious convictions and adhere to doctrines. We can attend worship services all of our lives. But if we don't work through pain and suffering and allow it to work through us, its natural cycle of loss and renewal, suffering can ruin our souls. It turns out in the Bible and in the Christian narrative, there is this cycle and this pattern of loss and renewal, loss and renewal. It's all through creation and the cosmos. This weekend, over Resurrection Weekend, we'll talk about it as death and resurrection. Loss and renewal. It's at every level of our stories. Every species navigates this. There's one species, however, that avoids. There's one species that avoids this suffering at all costs, the human species. Suffering, sitting still with it. When we do, it will genuinely lead us into this new experience rather than cause us to simply repeat the pain of the past again and again and again, when we allow our suffering to lead us someplace. Mary and Mary, they have this useful instinct to sit still by the tomb with their pain and allow this suffering to work its way through their bodies. We have said many things about Silent Sabbath, this day between crucifixion and resurrection. Over the years, we have said many things about what seems to be happening on this day where God is absent, where God is dead. This is our 10-year anniversary at La Sierra University Church of commemorating Silent Sabbath. In these 10 years, we've borrowed lyrics from Leonard Cohen. We've taken the counsel of Barbara Brown Taylor. We've listened to challenges of Joan Chittister, and we've taken considerations of Karl Barth. We've quoted prophets and priests and poets and prisoners. We've in this space heard opera and chancel choir, organ and chamber music. We've heard the clarity of a solo cello play and the simplicity of a single voice sing and the cacophony of chaos. We've heard spirituals and raps and rhapsodies. We've heard pounding nails and clanging cymbals and claps of thunder and tearing fabric. We've had dance so contemporary on this stage, no one understood it. And we've had chants so old, our memories are still haunted. We've had everything from a Hollywood tree in the middle of the platform, do you remember that? To Hollywood Jesus with the perfect hair. This place has been as dark as night, and we could hear children cry. And then we lit up the ceiling with the lament, and it took our breath. For 10 years, this community has told the story of the day God died. And then we told the story of the time Lowell Jordan with his power drill was working on a beam and his drill got stuck while his ladder fell out from under his feet and he waited for a rescue. We told the time Daniel Mall escaped violence in Pakistan and waited for Violet and 4 children to arrive in Los Angeles. We've told of waiting children in detainment centers talking to court-appointed translators and women in labor waiting to welcome life into the world. We've told our stories so we could better know God's story. And we tell God's story so we can better know our story. We've seen a communion table right here light on fire while Professor Maury Jackson gave us a communion homily. Go ahead and say it because we know what you're thinking. Yep, it was fire. And we've seen fabric fall off of walls and wires and props propped over. We've seen members trip over cords. Most memorable of all these 10 years, though, is probably the time Jesus missed his music cue and was resurrected too early. Some of us have traveled far distances to never miss 4 days with Jesus, and especially Silent Sabbath. And others of us stay away on this one particular dark day. We have said many things about God on Silent Sabbath. And as Adventist Christians, we have a particular sense there is something we can say. What is God doing this day? This year, however, a virus is happening to us, and it's brought us vulnerability and candor and honesty. It's got our attention like nothing else has had our collective attention in decades. None of us have been through an Easter weekend like this one. Shelter at home? When was that? What would have been the last time that happened to any of us? The last Great War? The Great Depression? Last night, this church, the La Sierra University Church, did a communion service like we've never experienced it. Scattered in our homes all across Riverside, separated yet celebrating. And we ate tortillas and pita bread and crackers and chips, and some of us tried our hand at making our own fresh communion bread. Some of us burnt it, some of us didn't bake it. This congregation, we purchased our first communion kit in 1923, a communion kit that would serve 120 people. We've been eating the communion bread from the Garrigus and Mina homes for decades now. And yet last night, we did something we never would have imagined. This particular communion only happened because a virus is happening to us all. It's in this cultural moment we're keeping watch then with Mary and Mary, who sit opposite the tomb all night long. They might caution us that we not move too quickly, that we not make good news come out of trauma too quickly. Mary and Mary might tell me, the preacher, go easy with this crucifixion talk. You see, Christianity teaches that crucifixion is good news, actually. And as your pastor, I'm supposed to find that good news. I'm supposed to find the good news in crucifixion, and I'm supposed to preach it and teach it to you in as many ways as we possibly can. Though we're not consistent in Christian tradition throughout history, we say much about crucifixion. Jesus died with us. Jesus died for us. Jesus died because of us. Jesus died in place of us. Pick your preposition. Jesus dies. Jesus dies a cruel death, bullied by the religious elites who've rallied the crowds and made them part of this masquerade. Jesus dies. And on Holy Saturday Sabbath, the day Jesus lays in the tomb, Mary and Mary stare in disbelief, shouting to them that crucifixion is good news. Well, that's like trying to find a silver lining in a pandemic that's taking one life, every 50 seconds? Too soon. It's too soon to talk about good news. You know the phrase that we often use, I hear us use it when we're overwhelmed and we're feeling underwater, we cheer each other on. We'll say, you've got this. You've got this thing, man. You've got it. You can do difficult things. You're strong. You've got this. Sometimes we don't got this. I believe it's Martin Luther King Jr. who said, be careful of telling a man to pull himself up by his bootstraps if he doesn't have any boots. Here we are, keeping company with Mary and Mary, sitting barefoot by the tomb, and we're running barefoot through a pandemic. Sometimes reality is miserable, and we need to grieve it. Mary and Mary validate our instincts today. They cannot liberate the loss of their friend Jesus. They can only bear witness, church. Suffering belongs in our stories. Befriend suffering. You and I, we ought to befriend suffering. When we sit with it for a while, lessons will eventually come to us. Lessons will eventually come probably to Mary and Mary. Who knows when and how? Mary and Mary bear witness, however, to a God who didn't need to suffer, but who needed to come close. And in coming close, God suffers. In coming close, God suffers with you and with me. It's not the suffering that's redemptive, it's the solidarity. God's solidarity with people. I don't know if Mary and Mary can sense all of this day sitting across from the tomb. Our world is under the roof of a global quarantine right now. All of us around the world, nations will have stories to tell. Suffering is happening to all of us, though not at the same pace, not at the same depth. We're not all having the same experience. I was moved by a journalist this week who insisted that we not rush too soon to Easter Sunday. A journalist who said Good Friday, that the trauma of Good Friday might have some lessons to teach us. There are painful pandemic lessons we're already starting to learn. Brown and black-skinned people suffering at different levels. The elderly, the poor, and the poorer suffering at different levels. Already marginalized communities, the imprisoned, suffering at greater levels. Suffering eventually gives us lessons. It is the Indian author, Arundhati Roy, who has said in these last couple of weeks that pandemic can be a portal. Let me read her words. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This pandemic is no different. It's a portal. It's a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our data banks and our dead ideas. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. We see glimpses of people walking through that portal this week. There are unprecedented cooperative efforts between science and laboratories. Dozens and dozens of scientists and laboratories this week sharing data and details and reagents and results. Solidarity with one another is possible. On Holy Week, Silent Sabbath, this pandemic may actually help Christianity rehabilitate our story. Because, church, there was a time when the Christian convictions were actually dangerous in this world. There was a time when the convictions of Jesus were dangerous because Jesus believed that the suffering of one of us was the suffering of all of us. It was solidarity that got Jesus in trouble. I don't know how long it might have taken for Mary and Mary to walk through that portal. I don't know how long it would take you and me. When the Spirit says it's time, it's time. When the Spirit nudges you, it nudges you. That's when we begin to practice resurrection. Practice the life we imagine to be on the other side of the portal. And if you don't join us on Sunday morning, we'll be on Zoom. You can get there on our website, lasierra.church. Join us at 7 a.m. because we always wake up at 7 a.m. on Resurrection Sunday morning. If you don't join us Sunday morning, you miss the very best part of the story. Matthew betrays the ending. It's like he can't keep it to himself. In Matthew chapter 27, when Jesus takes his last breath, before we even get to the scene with Mary and Mary, when Jesus takes his last breath, Matthew says that the ground quakes and there's noise in the sky and rocks split open and graves open up and people are resurrected. Matthew can't keep it to himself. He tells the end of the story before the end of the story. Mary and Mary must not hear it. Mary and Mary, sitting and looking at the tomb. If all you feel capable of today is to sit still with Mary and Mary, that's plenty. Simply remember that what is happening to us is happening to God. And what's happening to God is happening to us. And I believe with all my heart there is no better place to be than in the good graces of God. Amen.
my Lord. tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord?
We've been watching Crystal Chavez, our artist, follow her instinct to create something beautiful. When we're sitting in this space, when we say practice resurrection, creating and making and doing art, that's one of the examples. Crystal's last installation we'll see Sunday morning, tomorrow morning, and then later this week you'll be able to drive by the church and see all of them setting out on the front steps for the community to enjoy. Practice resurrection, that's our confession and our invitation that we allow the Holy Spirit to bring us towards generous acts, to walk through the portal and create the future we imagine God is already working on. Practice resurrection. Remember, tomorrow morning, Sunday morning, 7 a.m., we're on our Zoom platform. You can get there through the church website. And then, the mayor of Riverside, Rusty Bailey, has invited us all to come to our patios and porches and our sidewalks Sunday morning at a safe distance with our masks on, and that we would all join together around the city of Riverside singing Amazing Grace. We told him we would love to participate. Now, while you're out there, look up, because you'll see a special treat up in the sky brought to you by the La Sierra University Church. See if you can find the Practice Resurrection flying high around the city of Riverside this weekend. We hope to worship with you one more time tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Now, however, on Silent Sabbath, even on Silent Sabbath, we pray the prayer Jesus taught us. How meaningful is it to say, "Thy kingdom come"? Wow. I invite you to pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Amen. Be well, church.